In 1513, a man sat in a small room outside Florence and wrote the most honest book about human nature ever printed. He had just been tortured, arrested, stripped of every political office he had spent his life building. And in that room, with nothing left to lose, Niccolò Machiavelli wrote The Prince, a book so ruthlessly accurate about how people actually behave that it was banned, burned, and condemned for centuries. Not because it was wrong, because it was right. His method was simple and radical at the same time. Don't listen to what people say they value. Watch what they actually do. Don't study the ideal, study the real. Because the gap between those two things, between what people claim to want and what they actually respond to, is where the truth lives. That gap is exactly what this article is about. Machiavelli pointed his lens at power and politics. We are going to point it at something most men spend more time thinking about than either of those things. We are going to point it at attraction, at what women genuinely respond to versus what they say they respond to. And we are going to follow behavior, not words, not stated preferences, not the comfortable advice that sounds right but produces nothing. From here we leave Machiavelli in the past where he belongs. What follows is not history, it is observation. And observation, as he knew better than anyone, is the only honest starting point. There is a gap that almost nobody talks about honestly. Ask most women what they want in a man and you will get a version of the same answer. Someone kind, someone who listens, someone emotionally available, attentive, supportive, someone who makes them feel safe. And all of those things are genuinely valued. Nobody is lying when they say them. But watch what happens in practice. Watch which men get pursued and which get overlooked. Watch which relationships develop intensity and which flatline into comfortable friendship. Watch who gets the second text, the changed plan, the 2 a.m. message, and you will notice consistently that the men receiving all of that are rarely the ones who optimized hardest for kindness and availability. This is not a criticism of women. It is an observation about how human psychology works beneath the level of conscious preference. What people say they want is real. But it is filtered through social expectation, through what sounds good, through what they believe they should want. Behavior is unfiltered. Behavior tells you what the nervous system actually responds to before the rational mind has a chance to edit it. And behavior observed honestly and consistently reveals this: women are drawn to men who have direction standards and gravity. Men who have a life that does not revolve around being chosen. Men whose presence carries weight because their absence would carry weight too. That is the gap. And everything that follows is an attempt to explain why it exists and what to do about it. Start with the most fundamental principle of desire: we want most, what we are not guaranteed to have. This is not a dating strategy. It is basic human psychology, and it operates the same way in every domain of life. The restaurant with a waiting list feels more worth going to than the one with empty tables at 8 on a Friday night. The opportunity with a deadline creates urgency that the open-ended opportunity never produces. The person who could leave and might holds our attention in a way that the person who will definitely stay never quite does. Apply that to attraction, and the implication is uncomfortable for a lot of men to sit with. A man who is endlessly available, who clears his schedule at any hint of interest, who replies instantly at all hours, who has no life outside of the pursuit that man is signaling, constantly and loudly that he is guaranteed. And what is guaranteed is not desired, it is simply there. Contrast that with a man who has genuine things pulling on his attention, who has work he cares about, friendships he maintains, a physical practice he shows up for, goals that existed before she walked in and will continue regardless of what she decides. That man is not playing hard to get, he is simply hard to get because his time and attention are genuinely occupied by a life worth living. The difference matters enormously. Manufactured scarcity, pretending to be busy, waiting arbitrary amounts of time before replying, running strategies designed to seem less available than you are, is detectable. Women have extraordinarily refined radar for the difference between a man who is genuinely living and a man who is performing the appearance of living. One feels like depth, the other feels like a tactic, and tactics, when sensed, produce the opposite of attraction. So the question is never how to seem less available. The question is how to build a life full enough that availability becomes a genuine constraint. That is the only version of scarcity that actually works. And it works not because it is strategic, but because it is real. Here's a pattern so consistent it borders on a law. Women respond to men who move, who decide, who act without waiting for a guaranteed outcome or a signed permission slip from the universe. And they lose interest, sometimes slowly, sometimes immediately, in men who hesitate, who hedge, who hint at what they want instead of stating it, who wait for the perfect moment that never quite arrives. This is not about aggression. It is not about forcing anything on anyone. It is about something far simpler and far rarer, the willingness to act under uncertainty. Think about what hesitation actually signals. When a man composes and deletes a message 17 times before sending something deliberately vague enough to be deniable, he is not being careful. He is being controlled by the fear of rejection. And fear of rejection is at its core a signal about internal stability. It says, "My sense of myself depends significantly on how you respond to me." It says, "I cannot absorb a no and remain intact." It says, "I need this to go well in order to feel okay." That signal is felt even when it is not consciously processed, and it produces reliably a reduction in attraction. Now contrast that with a man who asks directly, plainly, without the elaborate construction of plausible deniability, who states what he wants and absorbs whatever comes back, yes, no, or not yet, without collapsing or retaliating. That man is demonstrating something that words could never convey as efficiently, that his internal state does not depend on external validation, that he can be rejected and remain whole. That quality, the capacity to act without a safety net, is one of the most attractive things a human being can demonstrate. Not because it is dominant or impressive in a performative sense, but because it signals genuine psychological stability. And stability in a world of anxious, reactive people is magnetic. Boldness can be trained. It is not a personality type you are born with or without. It is a tolerance for uncertainty that you build by placing yourself in uncertain situations, repeatedly absorbing the discomfort, and discovering that you are still standing on the other side. Every time you ask directly instead of hinting. Every time you state a preference instead of deferring. Every time you say what you actually think instead of calibrating your opinion to the room, you are building the muscle. And the muscle, over time, becomes visible in everything about the way you move through the world. There is a quality that the most consistently attractive men share that has nothing to do with looks, nothing to do with money, and nothing to do with what they say. It is felt before a word is spoken. It is sensed within the first few minutes of being in someone's presence, and most men have no idea it exists, let alone how to develop it. Call it internal gravity. Internal gravity is the felt sense of a man who has a direction, who is building something, who has problems he is actively solving. A world that extends far beyond this conversation, and a sense of himself that does not require anyone else's input to remain intact. It is the quality that makes a room feel slightly different when he walks into it, not because he is performing anything, but because he is genuinely somewhere going somewhere, and his energy reflects that. You cannot fake this. That is the first and most important thing to understand about it. You can fake confidence for an evening. You can rehearse interesting things to say. You can dress well and project composure and manage a good first impression. But internal gravity, the real thing, is either present or absent within the first few minutes of genuine interaction, and people feel the difference immediately, even when they cannot name it. The modern failure is the production of men who have been trained out of having it. Somewhere in the process of raising men to be agreeable, accommodating, and inoffensive, to shrink their preferences, soften their opinions, and make everyone around them comfortable at all times, we produced a generation of men with no internal gravity. Men who are pleasant, men who are helpful, men who are impossible to dislike and impossible to be fascinated by, men who have, in trying to be everything everyone wanted, become nothing in particular. A man with no direction is not a safe choice. He is an uncertain one because his identity shifts with whatever influence is closest to him. A man with direction, with genuine standards, with something he is building that matters to him, that man is a stable point. And stable points in an unstable world are where people want to be. Internal gravity is built the same way everything real is built, through sustained effort in a specific direction over time, through physical discipline that teaches you what you are capable of when things are hard, through intellectual investment that gives you a genuine perspective on the world, through relationships maintained with care, not convenience, through work you take seriously enough to be proud of. None of this is glamorous. All of it compounds. Now we get to the thing that costs men more than almost anything else, and that almost no one talks about honestly. Most men, particularly men who are earnest and emotionally intelligent, reveal too much too soon. They share their feelings in the first conversation. They declare intentions on the second date. They open up their insecurities, their past relationships, their fears, their hopes for the future, all of it, laid out completely long, before anyone has earned the right to hold it. They do this because they have been told that emotional openness is always a virtue, that vulnerability is always strength, that the way to connect with someone is to show them everything as quickly as possible. That advice is half right and entirely misapplied. Vulnerability is powerful. It is one of the most connecting things a human being can offer another, but it is only powerful when it is earned and well-timed. When it is offered to someone who has demonstrated that they can hold it carefully, when it is revealed gradually as trust builds as the relationship earns the depth. Vulnerability dropped into the lap of a stranger on a first date is not courage, it is anxiety wearing the costume of openness, and it lands that way. The paradox is this: a man who reveals everything immediately has nothing left to discover. And discovery, the sense that there is more beneath the surface, that there are layers worth uncovering, that the person in front of you contains depths you haven't reached yet, is one of the primary engines of sustained attraction. Mystery is not the same as deception. Being layered is not being dishonest. A man who shares himself gradually, who lets people earn the deeper parts of who he is, who maintains the sense that there is always more to know, that man is compelling in a way that total transparency on day one can never be. He is not withholding to be strategic, he is simply pacing the revelation of himself to the actual pace of trust. And that pacing in itself communicates something important, that he values what he carries and does not hand it to everyone. Show enough to create genuine interest, let them earn the rest. The men who are most consistently magnetic share a quality that sounds simple and is genuinely rare. They are two things at once. They are warm but have edges. They are funny but they hold their ground. They listen deeply and they keep their own frame. They can be moved without being swept away. They can be challenged without crumbling or swinging back with unnecessary force. They are capable of tenderness and they are impossible to push around. Most men are only one of these things. The man who is all force confident, direct, physically imposing, dominant in every room, may project strength, but he cannot adapt. He cannot read the emotional temperature of a situation. He mistakes inflexibility for integrity and ends up bulldozing the very connections he wants to build. He is a closed fist when the moment calls for an open hand, and after a while being around him is exhausting in a way that erodes everything. The man who is all softness, emotionally intelligent, funny, endlessly considerate, a genuinely wonderful person to spend time with, often has no spine beneath the charm. He is so practiced at managing everyone's emotions that he never learned to hold his own ground. He adjusts his opinions to the room, he defers when he should lead, he is so busy being likable that he forgot to be someone. And being with him, however enjoyable, produces a slow and creeping sense that there is no weight there. Nothing to push against, nothing that won't yield. The combination, genuine warmth alongside genuine strength, real emotional intelligence alongside real backbone, is what every woman who has experienced it describes as unlike anyone I've ever met. It is rare because it requires developing two capacities that pull in different directions, and most people develop one at the expense of the other. The strength is built through challenge, through physical training, through hard professional decisions, through learning to hold your position under social pressure without needing to be cruel about it. The warmth and intelligence are built through curiosity, through reading, through paying close attention to people, through sitting with discomfort long enough to understand it rather than react to it. Both take years. Both are worth every hour. Here is where everything lands. After everything we have covered, the gap between stated preference and real behavior, the psychology of scarcity, the power of men who move, the quality of internal gravity, the art of strategic restraint, the rare combination of strength and warmth, there is one answer underneath all of it. One thing, the thing the whole article has been building toward. Women do not want a perfect man. They do not want the most attractive man, or the most successful man, or the most emotionally articulate man. What they want, beneath everything they say, beneath everything they consciously know about their own preferences, is a man who cannot be controlled. Not a man who is difficult or withholding as a performance. Not a man who manufactures resistance to seem valuable. But a man whose approval genuinely means something because it is not automatically given. A man who has a direction that does not bend under social pressure. A man who could genuinely leave, who chooses to stay, and whose choice therefore carries actual weight. Because here is what the presence of that man communicates at a level far beneath words. His attention is not available to everyone. His investment is not given cheaply. His care has been directed here specifically, and it could have gone elsewhere. And that specificity, the sense of being chosen by someone who actually has a choice, is one of the deepest forms of being valued that human psychology knows. The men trying hardest to be wanted are the least wanted, because the trying, the relentless optimizing for approval, the constant calibration of behavior to produce a desired response signals exactly what destroys attraction. A man whose entire sense of himself depends on whether she approves, a man shaped entirely by external response. A man who has no internal world that doesn't require her to complete it. The men who are genuinely pursued are not trying to be pursued. They are building something. They are developing something. They are living a life that has genuine weight, genuine direction, genuine standards, and she is welcome in that life. But the life does not require her in order to be worth living. That is the brutal truth. It was always the brutal truth. It just required a particular kind of honesty to say it out loud. So here is where we end. Not with a summary, not with a list of things to remember, with a single question and a single challenge. Look at your life right now with completely honest eyes. Where are you passive when you should be moving? Where are you accommodating when you should be leading? Where are you handing everything over freely when you should be letting someone earn it? Where are you waiting to be chosen instead of building something worth choosing? Find that place. You know where it is. You have probably known for a while, and then do something about it this week. Not next month, not when the circumstances are better. This week, because the only thing that has ever separated the men who are genuinely wanted from the men who wonder why they aren't is not luck, and it is not looks, and it is not some secret knowledge about what to say. It is the decision to become someone whose approval is actually worth having, and then the daily, unglamorous, entirely unsexy work of following through on that decision. Everything else takes care of itself.